I was born and raised in Minnesota. I lived in the McDonough housing projects as a little kid. I had my most memorizing memories there. The McDonough housing projects had a reputation for many events that happened there, good and bad. There are rumors that these projects were built on Native American burial sites because of its hilly aspects. The place that my family and I lived in was previously owned by a white guy who got burned alive in his burning house. The story was that he got out, but he went back inside to get his money because he had money hidden in the house. I think this caused some weird things to happen. Like my brother's room had a closet that is always warm for no reason. Even if the windows are open, it is still warm. People believe that that was where the fire started. There were also huge rats that lived with us. There would be nights of us hearing them go up and down the stairs, and it sounded like a person. I remember one getting fried in the oven. It was dead from poisoning, and my mom didn't know and was baking a cake that day. It was pretty nasty. This one night, I was trying to get some sleep with a blanket over my body to keep me warm. My two brothers and I fought over the best blanket while we were laying on the bed and tumbling around our arms and legs. My dad was sleeping in the room with us. There were only 2 king-sized beds that were moved close together to make a big overall sleeping space. My dad snores loudly when he sleeps, so while my dad was snoring, I was trying to get the best blanket but failed and was left with nothing for a bit. Wow, I can relate with that. I laid there for a second, complaining to my dad, calling out his name, that my brothers took all the blankets. He just mumbled and told my brothers to give me some blanket and went back to sleep. My brothers didn't reply, and I was still left blanketless. I laid there, complaining for a while, and then stopped and just tried to get some sleep. While I slept there, uncovered, I felt a cold hand grab my feet. I reacted to it with a quick yelp and literally jumped from a laying down position back on the bed to the air and in between my dad and brothers. I yelled and cried that I felt a cold hand grab my feet. My dad said to not worry and just to go back to sleep. One of my brothers said that it could have been a rat. After my brother said that, I replied, telling him that it was a hand that grabbed my feet. I could feel the fingers grip onto my feet. I was so scared that I just fell asleep. The next morning, I told my family what happened, but they didn't believe me and just said that it was probably something else. And to this day, I don't sleep unless I have something covering my feet. I keep thinking that it could have been a rat, but it was just too real that night. It was definitely a hand. I imagine it being the spirit of the person coming back searching for his dollars. I have lived for a long time in the McDonough home projects to encounter enough of paranormal activities. I know for a fact that it wasn't just me, but my mother encountered them as well. Most of the time, we couldn't see them, but we can hear them roaming around. That was enough to frighten us. However, what I'm about to share with you is the entire opposite of just hearing. I am the middle child as well as the oldest daughter. One night, around 8 to 9 p.m., I had to watch my youngest sister, who was only an infant, around 8 months old at that time. She barely knew how to walk. During this event, it was just my oldest brother and I who were home with my baby sister. My sister and I were hanging out in one of my older brother's room while my oldest brother was in his room on his computer. At that time, I made a little swing out of bed sheets in my brother's closet for my sister so I could rock her while I do my mom's Hmong embroidery. As I was doing my piece of work, I would give her a little push every now and then whenever she whined. She was giggling and babbling for 15 or 20 minutes or so. Suddenly, something went wrong. She started crying hysterically like someone was hurting her. I lifted up my head to look, and to my surprise, the swing was rocking so fast by itself. I was terrified. I quickly got up and stopped the swing. Right when I did so, what I saw behind the swing was a pair of pale bluish hands the size of an adult quickly retract. I was so horrified. I picked up my sister and ran to my oldest brother. Everything happened so quickly I didn't even remember to investigate. When I reached my brother, he asked what I did to our sister and why I looked so pale. At that moment, I couldn't even talk, but instead shed tears and sobbed my heart out. After a week of notifying my mother about the incident, she had a pastor and his crew come over to bless the house. I'm in my 20s now with 2 kids, and that house still haunts me in my dream to this day. Interested in sharing your stories? Submit them to HmongChronicles@gmail.com or in the description below. Here is the next story. Thank you. So last year we bought a house in the suburbs and started moving in. We had boxes all over the place, and before it got too dark, we decided to go buy a lamp for the living room because our house was a 70s house that didn't have any lights in the living room. Anyways, my 3 kids and I were messing around while my husband was putting this tall lamp together. It was getting dark fast and we could barely see anything anymore, so we turned on the light in the kitchen to see what we were doing. When all the cords started coiling up, I asked my son to help hold some of the parts. My husband was in front of me facing my son and I. The 2 of us were facing the kitchen. In the mix, I thought I saw a kid in a red shirt and blue jeans standing in the dining room on the other side of the kitchen. I was too scared to do a double take, so instead I ignored it. As soon as I ignored it, my son jumped up and said, "Mommy, there's a boy in the kitchen." My husband and I just stared at each other. We were both too afraid to look into the kitchen and see for ourselves. The 2 of us acted brave and told my son that there was nothing there and that he shouldn't say that because he was going to scare the younger kids. My husband started to yell at my son for making things up. Well, that's kind of mean. We walked away and ignored it, and still, we never checked it. Later on, we went to bed and I told my husband that he needs to stop yelling at our son so much for saying that, because I saw it too, and didn't say anything because I didn't want to scare anyone. The next day, I sat down with my son and asked him whether or not he really saw it, or if he was just playing too much video games and letting his imagination get the better of him. My son swore that he saw it, so I asked him to describe it. That's when he took me to the kitchen and showed me where it was standing in the dining room. My son told me that it was wearing a red shirt and blue jeans, the exact description of what I saw on the little boy. About 3 years ago, my ex-boyfriend and I had an argument because he would always go out and never spend time with me. One night, I told him to stay over for the night. Because of the argument, I was upset and crying over something. While we were about to go to sleep in bed, he set up this blue chair and put my box fan on top of it so it would circulate the air in my bedroom so that it wouldn't be too hot when we sleep. I remember being so hurt because of something he did, and I was tearing up next to him, not saying much but tried to sleep on it. All of a sudden, the fan fell down. We didn't think much of it because sometimes it would fall over because it wasn't stable. He then got up and placed the box fan on the blue chair again. While I was trying to fall asleep in the dark, we heard an angry, loud voice roaring at us. It sounded like a man was right next to us and was really angry. My ex then leaped out of the bed and quickly turned on the lights, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. The thing though is that I took that blue chair from my old house. That was the chair that I used to see this shadow man sitting on. Not only that, but most of my family members have also seen him as well. Ever since that night, we decided to throw that blue chair away. My friend once told me a story when he dated this girl. He would always go to her house, but only at night because that was when her parents were asleep. He told us that whenever he walks into the house, it didn't feel right. He would always get the chills. The TV was on, but only showed a channel with no signal. You know, those black and white static lines? Well, one day, he was waiting outside the house, and the neighbor next door told him that no one lived in that house. My friend got pretty scared because he didn't want to believe the neighbor. So when he entered the house, he asked why the house was always cold, and his girlfriend said that it was the AC and that the parents like it cold. My friend then questioned why the TV was always on with no signal, and the girlfriend said that they were trying to fix something. Sounds like a fairy tale. What his girlfriend said to him made a lot of sense for him, but he wasn't satisfied. When they went to her bedroom and she went to the bathroom, he was laying on the bed and put his hand under the pillow and felt something. So he pulled out what looked to be a piece of paper, and it said that the house was in foreclosure. That was his last day with that girlfriend. He didn't know if it was a real girl or not, but she just didn't feel right. This happened to one of my brother's friend. My brother said that he went to pick up his friend Thu from the airport in North Carolina. It was only my brother and his friend Tong that came along with him and the friend that they were picking up. When he got to the car, there was a heavy smell like something that had been dead for days. No one questioned the smell. When my brother dropped Thu off at his cousin's place, the smell had went away. Later that night, my brother had a welcome back party for Thu at our house. When he arrived, they all drank and played cards. Thu wasn't even drunk, but he was running around like someone or something was chasing him. All he said was that he needed to go home right now. My brother took him home. The next day, Thu came over and said that he was sorry for what happened last night. My brother asked him why he had been acting so strange lately and that he's changed from the last time when my brother met him. Thu said that one night, back in his hometown, his gangster friends and him sold weed and things didn't go as planned, so they started shooting at the other guys. Thu said that he had accidentally shot an old lady that drove by that night. Ever since then, that same old lady has been following him, and the smell from when my brother picked him up was that old lady because she had been sitting on his lap the whole ride. Yesterday night, at the party, the old lady was chasing him around, and that's why he went crazy. Thu said that she has been with him since that night, and it has been a couple of years now. Poor old lady. I hope she haunts him to death. The story I'm going to tell you is about my uncle, his family, and the house that they live in. My uncle has 6 boys and 4 girls. They lived in this big house with a small, shallow, knee-deep pond and an odd-looking hand tree in the backyard. One day, all the kids were playing in the backyard near the pond. The youngest daughter had gone into the pond and was knee-deep in. Then she froze there. It didn't move for at least 5 minutes until the oldest brother finally noticed. He went to shake her a little bit, but she just fell over. He freaked out and carried her out of the pond. When they checked, she was already dead. My uncle's family didn't know what happened. Then, another occurrence happened. Their middle child, a boy, was playing with his brothers, and they made a little rope that they could jump through. Well, he went to check it, and he put his head through the rope and just stood there frozen. They waited and waited, but a few minutes passed by, and he wouldn't move. That's when the siblings went and checked, and just like their sister, he was dead. There were many more things that occurred, and now my uncle only has 2 sons and 2 daughters left. Dang, they are still living in that house. I don't know why they didn't leave yet. His children's deaths were so odd, and it didn't make any sense. They wouldn't go and ask a shaman for help or anything either. So you're telling me they had 10 kids, 6 boys and 4 girls, and now they only have 4 kids left? That's crazy. So this happened to one of my friends named Lore. Lore is a person who has that gift to see and communicate with the dead. He had always been like this ever since he was a kid. It was one hot summer day in Minnesota. Lore and his cousins were bored, so they decided to walk to their friend's house to hang out. Lore and his cousins hung out at their friend's house the whole day until nighttime. As the day came to an end, Lore and his cousins knew that they had to walk back home, and so they did. It was nighttime, so the streets were very dark. While Lore was walking, he noticed that he got very tired and weak. As he got more tired and weak, he slowed down. By now, his cousins were way ahead of him. Lore walked past a car parked by the curb and decided to look at the window. He saw his reflection, but it was more than just his reflection. In his reflection, he said that he saw a little girl sitting on his shoulders. If you have seen that Thai horror movie Shudder, then you'll know what I'm talking about. The girl was wearing a dirty dress and had long, messy hair. After seeing his reflection on the car's window, he got so scared that he ran to his cousins, screaming in terror. This story goes way back when Asiantown was still popular. A friend of mine, let's call him A, he was really stressed because of a heartbreak. His friend suggested to talk to this girl named Hillary. A wasn't looking for anything serious, but he decided to talk to her through Asiantown. They talked and talked and talked, and A started to develop feelings for her. One night, he was going to a party. He called and asked if Hillary wanted to tag along. She said yes. So my friend A asked her where she lived so that he and his friends could pick her up. Hillary happily obliged and gave her her address. Back then, we didn't have a GPS, so you had to really navigate, and A and his friends were driving around when they came across a cemetery. This cemetery was supposedly the address that Hillary gave to A. He and his friends noticed that there was not a house in sight, and so A called Hillary and asked her what her house looked like. Hillary said that it was the tallest house. So the group of boys got out and looked around and noticed a tall building in the middle of the cemetery. A and his friends got so scared and drove off, never speaking of her or talked to her ever again. Sounds like that cemetery by Jackson Street or whatever.